Prophetic vision of ferocious wave going to hell in a handbasket. I keep facing a gigantic cliff of a wave. It is hoisting and spitting the discards and detritus of the smoking, spewing factories. The rejected parts of the abattoirs, carnal slag tumbling in the thrashing breakers, like the giant wings of prehistoric birds in combat. Then rumbling uprooted trees, crashed piers, take skiffs inland. They smithereen the tavern window through lobsters won't be boiled and devoured tonight, if lucky quelling again on the ocean floor. Shock socks sopping in the loudness, underwear caped, rock and lingcod. Shoes tumbling like sneakers in a laundromat dryer. The beggars, the able-bodied ones, scamper for high ground. The ancient, crippled, sick and lame go the way of centuries. Air vehicles pulled in as if by magnets. Airborne trucks headed for the moon. Cellular memories of the Atlantic swamping the Mediterranean valley. A memory salted at the bottom of a mighty sea. Escaped oarsmen adhering to a spontaneous anarchy. Renegade chemicals, vats and vials of pesticides and biological warfare. Explosive fire burning flames of chemical water. Invisible creeping horror. Empire of the ants. Billions of mutant cockroaches. Pantry moths of Transylvania. Diseased ticks. Tarantellas dancing a cranked and coked tarantella. An infant's high chair leaps up to clang the rim of hoopsters now higher than old church, reconfigured to be a B&B rental, whose swaying spire gaffs a prepubescent girl in pink dress clenching her calico kitty. Two 21st century automobiles just total themselves in the lashing atmosphere. Video and surveillance. A pork chop is stutter wiggling like a man with critters in his shorts. If it goes down, it'll flip and be ripped apart. The sun appears as an apparition, as if it were smoking or perspiring an egg yolk dropped into Mars. There are definitely songs and chants from the era of the gutter punk and new wave punk. The era of the slashing, flashing, kaleidoscopic, screaming guitar brains on acid. The rumbling, walking bass of blues and bop. The exquisite heart of Dolphy's feathers for bird. The grandest of grand medleys. Wagner, Stravinsky, Pachelbel, Cozy Cole, Bird, Max Roach, Buffy, Dylan, Towns, Little Walter, Levon Helm, Willie and Waylon, Exuma, bagpipes, dulcimers, steel drums, giant conch shells, trombones, bones, harps, tom-toms, calliopes, saxophones, aboriginal sticks, singing bowls, Fenders and Martins, ukes and pedal steels, banjos, squeeze boxes, fidelas, cornet spoons, wash tubs, cellos, flutes, throats, all at once in that wave. Lyres and cement mixers. I'm watching it all go to hell in a handbasket.
You've been listening to Andy Clausen, who's been called the world's greatest living poet. Well, actually, America's greatest living poet. And when did you write this poem, Andy?
Well, this is about a week old, yeah.
And what inspired it?
I wanted to write something, and all of a sudden I saw this giant wave, and I realized what was in it. And I wasn't really trying to say anything other than there's a whole lot of stuff in this giant wave and it doesn't look good. Basically, that's it.
Is that a strange noise?
What's that?
The noise.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Plus, there's a little bit of glare.
yeah, we'll shut that off. Yeah, the what do you call it? The fan on that it overheats sometimes and gets stuck, but it'll be all right.
Well, that was a really great poem. You know I love it. You've definitely been a friend of Allen Ginsberg and Gregory Corso, Ray Bremser, Janine Palmy Vega, and all the basic beat poets. And what made you get into poetry and even meet any of these people?
Well, after I got out of active duty on the Marines, I took acid, and that really changed me. And a friend of mine handed me Big Sur by Jack Kerouac and said, "This is how you think on acid." And I thought, yeah, but actually, unbeknownst to me, he was coming off a long-time alcohol jag down there in Big Sur. But and so then I read another book, Desolation Angels, On the Road, then Desolation Angels, and in the foreword by Seymour Krim, who I got to meet and read with in Manhattan. Brilliant guy. He explained to everybody who the characters in Kerouac's books were based on, and a lot of them were poets. And I went to Shakespeare's bookstore in Berkeley and bought Howl by Allen Ginsberg, Happy Birthday of Death by Gregory Corso, and Bominous Manifesto by Bob Kaufman. And then when I did that, I said, wow, this is so great. This is the next thing. This is going to be as big as baseball. And then, you know, like I saw a poster of these kids in this giant poster at my friend's house. And I said, what's that? And I said, oh, that's what napalm does. And then I saw Allen Ginsberg do the Wichita Vortex Sutra on TV. And he says, has anyone looked into the eyes of the dead? And the camera focused on his eyes. And I said, I'm getting out of here. So I thought, then I realized, you know, how society was screwed up and how we were wrongly taught about God and, you know, and how religion had, you know, been used by people for thousands of years for ugliness. So but then I saw poetry, and it got to me. I figured I would do that and use poetry to get my message across. Like Spinoza says, you know, what most of us are doing is trying to love the things that we love and get other people to love them also.
So you see poetry as sort of a soapbox in a way, or a way to teach.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good way of saying it. Yes, I've always admired orators. You know, the great speech by Spartacus to, and you tell the Roman Senate this. You know, when he sends back the baton. William Jennings Bryan. You know, you shall not crucify man on a cross of gold. Mankind has a right to make its own mistakes. Yes. And then, of course, being involved with this vehicle for 50, 60 years, I learned to love a lot of the aspects of it. You know, and I made friends with. Allen Ginsberg came to Anchor Steam beer place where we had it was called the Rolling Renaissance in '68, and we had a big party there in the brewery, And Alan showed up, and there was about 11 of us, including me, who had our clothes off, and we were, you know, big crowd, fairly good crowd of people, of the poets there, and could get the beer right out of the wall. And then I asked Alan to come to the poetry reading of the young upstarts, you know, from Berkeley, and he came, and then the day after he came to my apartment in Oakland. You know, Albert comes in and says, "Alan Ginsberg's here," and he was there with Peter.
How do you know where you live?
I don't know how I find he can find things out. Alan had a Rolodex like nobody's business, but and he was looking for through my books. He wanted to find out. I had said, you know, the 5 senses of the 5 wounds of Christ, and he wanted to find out where I found that out. And I told him I just made it up because I thought it sounded far out, and so then we became friends. I sent him some poetry, and I visited him, and I became friends with the beats that were in my town. You know, Micheline and Jimmy Lyons, and there were a lot of people. Kay McDonough.
What about Bob Kaufman?
Oh, Bob Kaufman, yeah, he hung out in San Francisco at you know, his last 20 years or so. After reading the Abominus Manifesto on Solitude's Crowded and Loneliness, I realized how great this guy was. And I went to the coffee gallery. They used to have poetry readings there. And I saw, and you'd get 3 free beers if you were one of the first 13 people to sign up. And this black guy, oh, maybe a bum, maybe not, gets up there and says something like, "The coffee gallery's God." I said, "What a smart wino, he got us 3 free beers." I didn't know it was Bob Kaufman, but, and then I saw him read. We had him read at, we did a marathon at the Rainbow Cultural Center in Berkeley, 143 hours of poetry straight. 263 poets. And I'd have to be there. Oh, the 2 a.m. poet didn't show up, and I'd have to go out there, and we'd have to have 2 people in the audience. All that. We were going for the record. But
did you make the record?
we didn't. They wouldn't give it to us because they didn't have anything to compare it to, is what Guinness said. But we had done all the stuff. We had 5-minute breaks, no more than a 5-minute break. And we had them going through. And I had met Bob there, and then one day I was selling a little book I did, Shooby Dooby Eop, me and Linda put out, and I was selling on the street, doing really well too. And I went to have a beer at the coffee gallery, and Bob was sitting 2 or 3 chairs from me, and and he at the time was on a vow of silence for about 10 years. He wasn't totally that, but he didn't do much talking, you know, after Kennedy got killed and after Sputnik went into the air. He was protesting. But anyway, he says, "Andy, don't do that." He knew my name. I was so, wow. And what it was is I had reached for my glass of beer, but I got the wrong one where everybody had been putting the cigarette butts and spitting in it and stuff. And so that was great that he caught that. And he told me, he says, "You're wondering probably if I still write. I write some," he says, and I know you're writing, and I like it. And I thought, like, wow, I was on a cloud for a while. You know, he's considered the Black Rimbaud, supposedly, in France. They really like this stuff. He's a surrealist, but he makes sense.
You got an award, the Beat Poet Laureate Lifetime Achievement Award forever. Before they had given you, they had made you Beat Poet Laureate of New York, but now they've extended it just for 2. They had done it just for 2 years, and now its lifetime. So that's pretty great.
Yeah.
You even had a plaque.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know where it is. It's somewhere here on my desk. And yeah, it's I hope I can utilize it. You know, I'd really like to keep the classical beats, the beat generation alive, and I'd like to have people write and improve on what they did, like Whitman wanted us them to improve upon what he did.
Well, they say baby beat, neo beat, and after beat.
No, I go with just beat because after beat I might go with, but not baby beat or neo. You know, it's a generation's like 25 years, but beat is forever.
There you go. Well, what other poets inspired you besides the beats?
Yeah, and a lot of them I was turned on to, you know, one way or another by the beats. Mayakovsky, Yasinin, Ilana Guro, Walt Whitman, William Blake, Shelley, Lord Byron, who I really get a kick out of. Rimbaud, some, you know, yeah, John Donne, but yeah, I say those are, oh, Sappho, what the little I can get of her. I really think that that the little bit that we have from her and when other people wrote about her, she must have really been something.
And what about William Burroughs? He's like one of the main beats, but you don't talk about him that much.
No, I didn't get that along with him that well. I was a chauffeur for a day in Boulder, and he's kind of a hard, cold cat in my opinion, and I respect him, his political analyzation. Oh, that great poem about Thanksgiving in America, that's really, really, really hot.
Superb, I know.
But like the cut-up method, I'm not so enamored of because the mind does that, you know, on its own. Sometimes, you know, like Dylan in the Memphis Blues again, he smoked my eyelids and punched my cigarette. Cut it up, you know, did the other. But I wasn't that excited about it as much. I did know his son, William Burroughs Jr., Billy, and he wrote two great books, Speed and Kentucky Ham. I really enjoyed those. Those were in the voice of his young generation, and very honest and fun to read. And one time I told Billy I didn't think his dad was anywhere near as good as him as a writer, and he wanted to fight me.
And what about Gregory? He was like one of your buds.
Well, he you know, he came out to San Francisco and we set up a reading, and he lived with me for a couple months, my family, and with his son Max, and there's wild times. Gregory Corso walks into a room, it's not the same room anymore. A very exciting person, could also be, you know, pain. He could really be nasty, but overall it was to me it was a great good experience, you know.
Well, I know he said something about he said something about him being Daddy Punk and you're Andy Punk.
Yeah. Yeah, because Punk was big then, and they asked him that in an interview, and you know, it's well, here's a little bit of Gregory from my book Beat. Gregory works himself. Oh, this is after the poetry reading in North Beach. Me, him, and Billy Finkelstein, called Billy Robinson at the time, and we all went in my convertible with Buckminster, our buddy, great photographer, up to Tahoe, and we gambled the money away. Gregory works himself ahead, playing away well against the amiable blackjack dealer who wears a Biloxi, Mississippi ID tag. Then they drift to a Dayton, Ohio, and Gregory keeps inching upward. He's a few hundred ahead, and then comes the determined, beautiful No-Heart with no place of origin tag, who entraps Gregory in a 7 or 8 times $75 losing bet syndrome, and wow, did she shuffle and deal fast. We spent the rest of the night opening emergency envelopes from concerned women. Here's a 20 if you run out. More than one. Someone had the presents to save gas money. The plastic rear window in the convertible was goners, but we had a blanket. We saw this guy, a slender black man in a beautiful cuff-linked shirt, garters on his sleeves, jewels on his fingers, which looked like they could go 14 keys on a piano, from bejeweled pinky to thumb, and 2 gold teeth, who could make those cards fly into one's hand. He could shuffle like a sorcerer, the cards following his hands like trained acrobats. He'd change the rhythm, and the cards would go from tango to mambo. They came to you like a butterfly or out of a slingshot. His smile, sunlight on a polished nugget, and there were gamblers lined up to play at his table. Why would anyone play with real money with a guy who could handle cards like that? Gregory acted like money didn't mean that much. They say he lost his first big royalty check at the track in one day. In Atlantic City, my buddy was with him when he won $4,000 and gave them back every cent. So Gregory's reading at USF and he's doing his ta-da, one-finger brushes, the hair back, sometimes hand-on-hip pose after letting out one of his beloved one-liners, combining philosophic, classical elegance and the street, particularly New York Street. We just found out Ali had lost the title to Leon Spinks. Gregory says that Ali wanted to give it to the kid from the ghetto. Then he sees my buddy Wojciech, who is generally one of the most decent and best-spirited people I know, clean liver, really talented too. And Gregory lets everyone know all the trouble in the world, all the suffering and incongruencies and pain and anguish is because of one man. And he is in the room right now, back there, pointing. Michael Wojciech. People turn. Wojciech has the biggest grin. I'm amazed, shocked. In Austin, Gregory spent a week before the reading, promoted by Wojciech and Nico, his lifelong love, doing the town. Goes with my cab driver buddy, a super Corso fan. The guy owns 5 books of poetry, a Rimbaud, and 4 Corsos. Gregory Corso goes berserk on cabbie CB, blurts out awful antagonisms, giggling with wild Tamerlane eyes. Everybody wants a piece of him. He eats salad at the Novu Chishi pecan pie restaurant with no utensils, his face in the plate like a cow or goat. He poses on 6th Street with tourists for tourist photos with little Corso hanging out. Gregory has some worked up spit or something in his hands, reaches in his pants, whips it out, and shows the college boys. Tells them he was looking at that girl over there, just couldn't help himself.
Oh, some of that stuff today would be, I don't know whether people would handle his behavior, even though they didn't probably handle it all that well then, even in the 70s.
Actually, they were kind of stunned and amazed. You know, I thought like, I'm going to have to try and stop him from kicking his butt. No, they were like, what? Is that real?
I don't know how it would go now, though. It's a different time.
Yeah, that was, 80?
What about Ray Bremser? You spend a lot of time on him in the book Beat, Latter Days of the Beat Generation, a first-hand account, which is your latest prose book. And you spent a lot of time on Ray, and he's not one of the more well-known.
Well, one of the reasons was that Ray never really pushed himself. You know, not proselytized, but you know, he didn't do much promo on himself. Uh, he heard about the beats and he got into poetry when he was in prison. He was in prison because when he was 17, someone gave him a gun, and he walked around for 3 weeks, and then he tried to hold up a store, and he got a lot of time. He was, you know, kid looking for something. He was a speed skating champion of New Jersey for a while, roller skate. But his dad was a jazz musician who was on the boats all the time. His mom worked in a condom factory, and he spent some, but he had sent his poems out to Allen Ginsberg and Leroy Jones, who became Amiri Baraka, and he sent his poems out, so they knew about him. So when he got out of jail, he actually was already in the beat canon, and Ray had you know, he really had bouts with alcohol and heroin and speed. He was real a hog, as they say, and in about 1976, I think he left. Not Gardner, New Paltz, and moved up to Utica, and that's when I knew. And then he was at Allen's farm, but I think, and that's where I met him when I was taking care of Allen's farm with my family in the '80s. You know, Ray showed up and we got to be friends. We did readings down in New York City, and we did a couple of readings in New Paltz at the Friends of the Mountain, and he was a great friend and a very sincere guy. You know, you had to put up with some stuff to be his friend, but it was easy for me. Well, and his language, you know, he's almost like he's kind of like a Zamist from Russia. You know, he almost a language poet, but no, because the meaning and the rhythms from jazz and the neologisms that he came out with, and he kept his theme and thread and story together in those about times in jail or how much he loved Bonnie or you know what it is between white and black in America. You know, he wasn't afraid of much. And
well, we only have a few more minutes, and I know we could go on forever about Jack Micheline and Q.R. Hand and so many of the other poets that no one really mentions most of the time.
Well, but QR just passed, and he was a great, and I hope that they keep him alive. You know, the work.
Yeah, he was pretty wonderful, and it's a lot of the older ones are dropping off, and those ones that are the young ones are getting to be the older ones. What do you think is going to become of poetry? And you know, what's ahead? What do you think is ahead for?
Well, there are some poets out there who have really gotten the beat spirit. Some of them are involved, you know, with the beat organization from Connecticut,
Debbie Tosin Kilday.
Yeah, she does really good work, and a lot of those poets, Paul Richmond, yeah, and but there's a kid, Noah David Roberts, who's down in Pennsylvania, who I was really impressed with. Pamela Twining, you know, to me is my favorite woman poet, period, and a natural in poetry is what I think. We've got David Cope and Jim Cone still, but a lot of poets that are good poets that are out there.
Nancy Mercado.
Yeah, yeah. But Danny Shot.
Dan Shot. Yeah.
He did the best book that I've seen this century so far.
Well, we're going to have to go for this portion of the interview. Maybe sometime we can get back together.
Yeah, I can tell you my revision techniques and all the little rituals. No, I don't do rituals, but what gets me to writing.
When you're burning the incense and burning the something. Anyway, I just wanted to close with this little snippet of an interview that, well, I guess it was an interview, but Gregory and Alan were talking to each other, and this was probably back in the 80s. And Gregory said that I guess Andy Clausen is another, speaking of poets up and coming, and Alan said, "Oh, I just got a big manuscript from Clausen. I just sent it to Ferlinghetti. Now Clausen, I think, is a really interesting poet." Gregory said, "Yeah, he is." Alan said, "He speaks to the time," and Gregory echoed him, "Speaks to the time, right." And Alan said, "Amazing. He's a hod carrier and he's a mensch. And sometime, the next time we talk, maybe we'll talk about your other jobs, your construction worker self."
You really want to know that, huh?
Well, it's not every poet or every well-known poet that has gnarly, tough hands that are hard from working.
Jack London, he wasn't exactly a poet, but Jack London's one. There's others.
So we got close, but I hope that we can talk again sometime soon.
Sure. The money's good.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right.